Welcome back to the podcast. I am recording today just a few days after the ending of the Extraordinary Practitioner Framework retreat. For those of you that joined me for that last week, again, thank you so much for coming. It was such a rich time, as it always is, with so much learning and so many breakthroughs and ahas. And you could just feel in the circle, self-compassion was being created and so much self-love and inspiration for going forward and going deeper with clients and with ourselves and in our businesses. And I'm just always so grateful for that opportunity. So, on the heels of that, I am really excited about today's podcast. Every autumn for the last about 22 years, I've spent reflective journaling and ritual time working with the Sumerian myth of Inanna's descent. And it's really important personal work that for me gets deeper and more meaningful and profound each cycle that I work on it and focus on it. And of course, I've worked with this myth with many clients and students over the years as well. The myth of Inanna's descent is a story about the changing of the seasons. It's also a story about embracing mortality. It's also a story about death and rebirth. And it's a story about facing one's shadows and the tougher parts of ourselves. But where I'm going to focus for our podcast today is here. The myth of Inanna's descent is also a story about connecting with one's truest self and how our worldly pursuits of success and of the status symbols that culture tells us we absolutely need in order to be worthy can sometimes stand in our way of being our truest selves, of loving and having compassion for ourselves. And it can sometimes stand in the way of being all of who we are. Sometimes that pursuit of success and those status symbols can even stand in our way of achieving the success that we want. We're going to look more deeply at that today. So, this episode is one where we are going to start to unpack some pesky beliefs that are probably blocking us. And of course, all of this also relates so much to being able to coach our clients, because part of our job as coaches is to support our clients to unpack and ultimately rewire their not so helpful beliefs. So, we're going to be working with this myth today, and I often work with myths through various types of exercises and somatic techniques and lots of ritual. I do this for myself and with my clients and students because myths can be such powerful transformation agents when it comes to fears, beliefs, and shadow. Myths can teach us about ourselves, about our human nature. They can teach us about the different parts of ourselves and the inner and outer journeys that we need to go on in life. Myths teach us often also about the natural world, and I use them for myself and with my clients and in my group work to help us more deeply understand ourselves and the world so that we can go deeper into our transformation. So, this is a really juicy episode, and I feel like I can pinky promise you'll learn some things for yourself and your client work. You're going to want to tune in deeply today. Now, before we jump into the myth of Inanna's descent, I just wanted to let you know because this myth is also about meeting the shadow. We're not going to talk too much about that today, but you might be interested. I have a gift ebook that is all about how to start working for yourself and a little bit with clients on the shadow. It is not a step by step because working with shadow is a big deal. You want to be trained in it. I take a lot of time when I train my students to work on shadow. That being said, this ebook is a great primer on what is shadow in the Jungian sense. What are some ways to spot it? And so I'll drop the link for that ebook in the show notes. I know you're gonna love it. Okay, so for those of you who are mythology nerds like I am, it's important to know this as we start to step in. We're not going to look today at the whole myth of Inanna's descent. That could take us easily 4 hours alone, if not much longer. Instead, for today, we're really going to hone in on just one part of the myth. We're going to take a look at, and we're going to use that as a way to take a look at the ways we hold ourselves back because of cultural and personal conditioning around status. The myth of Inanna is one of the oldest myths we know about. Inanna, being the queen of heaven and earth, was a goddess, a Sumerian goddess with a lot of power and respect and clout and status. So you can imagine that all of that also came with some ego and an attachment to her power and to the respect that she was given and an attachment to her status, right? All of that attached to her self-esteem and sense of worthiness. Now, Inanna had a sister, and some say it was her twin sister, and her name was Ereshkigal, and Ereshkigal was the queen of the underworld. Her life and environment was very different from Inanna's. While Inanna, as queen of heaven and earth, ruled in the realms of pleasure and in the realms of joy in life and the abundance of the earth. Her sister, Ereshkigal, is queen of the underworld, ruled in the realms of darkness, of grief, of scarcity, even sometimes. Now, for those of you who are new to understanding the cycles and the seasons, I want you to know this. We can't only always be in the light of day, right? In the metaphoric spring and summer, kind of like Inanna as queen of heaven and earth, right? We can't only always be in the light. Just like every cycle needs an autumn and a winter, and just like every day needs a night, we also, as humans, need the metaphoric underworld as part of our existence. And we need it because the underworld is necessary for transformation. Just like we can't get to the next spring without also going through the winter, we can't also get through our next evolution to the next level of who we are unless we're also willing to embrace the harder moments, the more bare moments, right? The quiet and the rest is just as important as the activity. The bareness at moments is just as important as the abundance. The darker moments are just as important as the lighter moments. We actually can't have one without the other. And we can't be whole and complete without accepting that the full range of experience is part of us. Now, also, when you look at any myth or fairy tale through a Jungian lens, you can see each figure in the myth as a different part of the human psyche. So, in many ways, Inanna and Ereshkigal are different parts of us. We have both inside of us. We don't want to glorify Inanna and vilify Ereshkigal, just like we don't want to only elevate summer and not honor the magic and the mystery of the winter. So, in this myth, Inanna is queen of heaven and earth, and her sister, Ereshkigal, in the underworld, her sister's husband dies. And upon his death, Inanna journeys to the underworld to mourn with and pay her respects to her sister. So already we can see that Inanna's descent is going to be an epic journey. We can see this as a metaphoric descent from summer to autumn and then to winter. We can see it as the mortal journey from life to death. We can see this as a metaphor for the inevitable cycles of life and the truth that there are going to be moments where we're on top of the world, and then there are going to be moments where we move from that place, where we're not on top of the world, where it won't feel like summer, when we'll have less or we'll need to grieve. And in those moments, we don't want to bypass the necessity of going to the underworld so that we can be with those parts of ourselves or be with our grief, so that we can be with what needs to be, and so that we can move through the transformational process and cycle. We can also see Inanna's descent to the underworld as the importance from time to time of coming face to face with our shadows, with the parts of ourselves that we keep locked away because maybe we think they are unsavory or that they're hard to be with or that they're inappropriate. But of course, all of our parts are so vital to who we are. So I love how the entire myth starts. It is so poetic and so powerful. And here are the words that it starts with. From the great above, she opened her ear to the great below. From the great above, the goddess opened her ear to the great below. From the great above, Inanna opened her ear to the great below. So, in those opening words, we see that Inanna needs to make the decision intentionally to open her ear to the great below, to really listen to the call of the underworld or that winter season. It's just like as humans, we all sometimes need to move through the winter. We need to move through the night. We need to be able also to intentionally listen for when other parts of ourselves are calling to us. So, this journey to the great below, to the underworld, it was a big journey and a hard journey and a trying journey, right? To get to the underworld in this story. And of course, it is big and hard and trying sometimes to get to the metaphoric underworld that I've been talking about in this episode so far. And so Inanna in the myth, she wanted to make sure that she was fully prepared and protected with all of her power intact to make this descent, to go on this journey. And so the myth says the following. Inanna placed her crown on her head. She tied the small lapis beads around her neck. She wrapped the royal robe around her body. She dabbed her eyes with ointment. She bound the warrior breastplate around her chest. She slipped the golden ring over her wrist. And she took her measuring rod. In other words, Inanna thought she needed all of these symbols of power to be with her in order for her to go and see her sister in the underworld. She thought that these symbols of her power and her status might help her there. But there was a little bit of a different plan as the myth unfolded. So, in order to get to the underworld, Inanna had to pass through 7 different gates. And at each gate, the gatekeeper requires Inanna to take off and release one of her symbols of her power and leave it at the gate. So the myth says when she entered the first gate, from her head, the crown was removed. Inanna asked, "What is this?" And she was told, "Quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned." And so Inanna went through this same exact process at each gate that she came upon on her way to her sister and the underworld. Inanna was required to put down her crown and put down her scepter and her warrior breastplate and her royal robe and her divining rod and so on and so forth. And each time when she protested at the gate, she was told by the gatekeeper, "Quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned." Until after all seven gates, Inanna was stripped bare, kind of like a tree at the end of autumn after it's shed all of its leaves and it's ready to go into the winter. Inanna had to give up each and every outward symbol of her power and her status in order to be allowed to enter the underworld and to be with her sister and her sister's grief and to go through her own transformational process down there. Now, this myth, which I think is so powerful, as we've said, it's about so many things, including what it takes to truly, deeply, and authentically know yourself and be with yourself. It reminds us that it's impossible to travel to the underworld, right? To our psyches, to our truest selves, to our places of deepest growth, to the places where we have the ability to shift and change. It's impossible to travel to those places if we identify too strongly with our status or only with what we've accomplished, with the money that we've earned, with the academic degrees that we've received, with the accolades that we've received, with the objects that we've acquired, or with the businesses we've built. Yes, of course, those things can be wonderful things, such wonderful things. I love them for sure. But when we come to rely too heavily on those things, when we start to identify too strongly with those status symbols or those symbols of power, when our symbols of success become the source of our self value, or if we don't achieve the success, if that becomes the source of us feeling we don't have value, well, then it's impossible to be able to truly connect with our real power, with our real selves, with our real resources, and with Source itself. I come back to this myth year after year again because for all of my worldly success, I know that I need a reminder that the success isn't me and that that's not what determines my value. And I also come back to the myth because from time to time, I need a reminder that all of the things I haven't yet achieved, the things maybe that I'm feeling disappointed about, well, that doesn't mean that I'm not of value. It just means I haven't achieved those things. Instead, what I want to remember, and this is why I come back, one of the reasons why I come back to this myth, I want to remember that who I truly am actually transcends all that I've accomplished or haven't accomplished. I want to remember that I am a person of immense values with or without my degrees, my business, my testimonials, how many clients I have, what my income numbers are, what my worldly success is. It is too easy for humans to lose touch with who we truly are, with what our true worth is when we are in the pursuit of more and of expansion. When we become too attached to these things, then we feel we need to get and create more and more and more, right? And so then maybe we end up working harder and harder. We stay above in Inanna's realm and we skip over going down into the underworld, into Ereshkigal's realm, into our deeper selves, into rest. And when we constantly stay up, right, and work more and work harder in this pursuit of more and expansion and more abundance and more worldly success, then we end up exhausted. We see this if we just look at the earth, right? An endless summer, meaning just continuing to work the earth and plow the earth and grow more and get the earth to give us more without taking a rest, right? Without taking a sabbatical. Well, it ends up robbing the earth of its nutrients, right? We need those rests. And I'll just share personally, for as much as I understand all of this cognitively, I do get caught in it every now and again, right? The other thing that I think is so vital, important here is that in our pursuit of more, and expansion and more success and really focusing on status symbols, we end up losing the original inspiration that we had when we set our goal, right? Maybe that original inspiration, the original purpose of the goal wasn't so attached to status or accomplishment. Maybe it was more rooted in true inspiration, right? In true service of the world and creating change or beauty or joy. And again, I'll share for me personally, all of my visions, all the goals that I set, they always start not with needing money or success or more clients or this or that. They always start from a place of wanting to be in my purpose and wanting to create change. Um, but I will tell you every now and again, like maybe during a launch, for example, I might lose sight of that momentarily, temporarily. And it becomes all about how many more, right? And what more? And am I reaching the numbers and all of that? And of course, numbers are important. I don't want to say that they're not, but I don't want us to get so hyper focused that we lose that original thread, right? That's so connected to a bigger vision and a bigger mission and a bigger purpose. And one of the many things that I love about the myth is that Inanna was so much like us, humans. She thought she needed all of her symbols of power in order to journey to the underworld, right? She didn't give those symbols of power up easily, not at any of the seven gates. In other words, as humans, we're meant to struggle and to grapple with this issue. But what I also love about the myth is that Inanna did ultimately put those things down until she was stripped down to her truest self. Inanna chose to, at least temporarily, strip herself of those worldly symbols so that she could see who she really was without them. And ultimately, this is what allowed her to enter the underworld, where many things happened, some not so easy. But I'll tell you, the end of the story is that Inanna ultimately came back from the underworld and to her role as queen of heaven and earth. And she came back renewed and rested and transformed and different. And I like to think that she came back as the next version of herself, as a more evolved version of herself. And she never could have done it if she hadn't been willing to let go of something at each of the gates and make her descent. So we want to work all of these ideas with ourselves, and also, as appropriate, we want to bring this into our client work, because it might be that for a particular client, to help them attract the right romantic relationship, let's say, they first need to let go of outdated self-worth ideas about marriage. Or it might be for another client to help them support to make a career move that's really aligned for them. They first need to shift beliefs about which careers they should be in, because maybe their family always placed status and worth on only particular careers. Or maybe for another client, in order for us to help them build their business, that client first needs to stop being on the hamster wheel of more and more work and doing more and more and more. And they need to go to the underworld to take time to rest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? One of the many jobs of a sacred depths coach is to help our clients become aware of the beliefs that have seeped into them through culture that they've internalized, that they don't even realize they've internalized, right? For us to help our clients become aware of these rules and codes that they're living by, that they may not even realize, these rules and codes that maybe don't serve them. And then from there, our job is to help our clients rewire those beliefs, both in the mind and also in the body. And another one of the jobs of a sacred depths coach is to support our clients to, when it's appropriate, go to the underworld, to sit in the shadows, for us to know how to hold space, to be able to sit in those shadows with our clients. But of course, none of this is easy work. To do this, it does take a lot of learning and growing and practice as a coach and a practitioner. That's one of the reasons why it takes us 10 months in Sacred Depths. And to do the pieces that I've been sharing, we really need 3 of the 4 main pillars that we cover in Sacred Depths. So, first pillar that we need, the first Sacred Depths pillar, is mastery of transformational skills, right? So, in the case of everything that we've been talking about today, in order to help our clients with all of this, we need our listening skills to be in tip-top shape so that we can hear the unhelpful beliefs, so that we can hear when it's time for a client to put down the clinging to the status symbols, so that we can hear when the underworld is calling to a client for transformation, right? We need our creating awareness skills so that we can support our clients to really be able to see this. We need great breakthrough questioning skills as a part of that. We need to master how to help our clients rewire unhelpful beliefs. Some of this might require really knowing how to help our clients befriend their fears, because there's going to be fear around not always clinging so much to success and status symbols. There's going to be fear about coming face to face with the Erishkigal inside of us. We need our navigating resistance skills to help our clients with this. There's going to be resistance. And we also need our skills around how to be in the mystery, another one of the modules that we go deep in sacred depths, right? Because one of the many reasons why so many of us are addicted to more of the Inanna part and less of the Erishkigal part is that there's clarity in the light. We want clarity, right? But part of life is also sometimes there are times for being in the mystery. And it's so important for us to help our clients with that as well. So that's the first pillar, mastery of transformational skills. The second pillar that we need for everything that we've been talking about today so that we can help our clients with it is the sacred depths pillar of mastery of human behavior, right? We need to understand how humans tick and the full range of human behavior. And of course, we've started to toe dip into this today by starting to use the myth of Inanna's descent as a way of understanding a slice of human behavior, right? In Sacred Depths, we look at so many different pieces of human behavior so that we can better understand our clients and know exactly how to use the transformational skills we're learning. Because each one of those skills need to be used in a different way depending on what's happening for the client in front of us, right? For the particular human in front of us. And the third pillar that can really help us help our clients with everything we've been talking about today is the sacred depths pillar of self mastery. So, what that means is that as coaches and practitioners, always, we need to be doing our own inner work. We cannot take our clients anywhere we haven't gone ourselves. If we haven't been willing, for example, to go through each of the seven gates, right, and unpack some of those beliefs and put down some of those symbols that we cling to, if we haven't been willing to sit with our own inner Arishkagal, right, then we can never help our clients do the same. So there is obviously a lot to this, but for today, I offer you a couple of journaling questions that can help you start to dip into this Inanna story and myth a little bit more. Here's one question. What are the places where you have become over attached to or over identified with status, with success, or with accomplishment? And Where does that over attachment and over identification come from? Here's another question to think about. What beliefs have you been believing because of an over attachment to success or accomplishment or status? What are the beliefs that have been formed because of that around your self-worth, around your self-value, around your ability, around what life is or should be? And then what impact are those beliefs having on you? So, for those of us like myself who live in the Northern Hemisphere, we are just at the start of autumn, and this is the time of the descent. The days are getting shorter and shorter, and the nights are getting longer and longer as we head towards the bareness of winter. And this time of year is such a magical opportunity for transformation and for psychic growth. And of course, that goes for no matter where you live. And so I hope that today's episode inspired you, opened up new ideas for you. And I invite you to, as you travel through this season, to remember Inanna and to play with shedding your attachments to worldly status symbols. And I invite you, along with that, to find your truest self that lives beneath all of it. I am willing to bet that that true self has some important and potent messages for you. As always, I hope that you enjoyed this episode and received a lot. I always love to hear from you and what you take away from these episodes. I want to remind you that the next round of the Sacred Depths Transformational Practitioner Certification starts in a few weeks. And it would be my pleasure and my honor to be able to share that journey with you. In Sacred Depths, we move through the three pillars I mentioned earlier. You get mastery of dozens and dozens of transformational skills. You receive mastery of human behavior. We look at so many different aspects of it. We do a ton of inner work in that third pillar of mastery of self. And then there's a fourth pillar in Sacred Depths, which is mastery of authentic, ethical, and effective business strategies. So we work a lot on your business. And those four pillars, what they do is they poise you to be a world-class transformational practitioner who knows exactly how to navigate your clients through whatever comes up. And through that mastery, you become the kind of coach and practitioner that your clients see as the one who helped them make the changes that they really wanted to make. And when that happens, you become poised for organic business growth through more client renewals, through more client referrals, through your reputation growing. And all of that gives you the confidence to take more action in your business and show up in the world. I will drop a link for Sacred Depths in the show notes. Please feel free to reach out and have a conversation with us about it. We'd love to talk to you about it. I'll also drop the link for that shadow ebook I mentioned earlier. And please, please, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, share it with a friend. Spread the love.